Have you ever watched the very man who raised you, fed you, and called you his child suddenly turn into a stranger? That night I did. And the pain of it still burns in my chest. It was late evening. The house unusually quiet. My father sat in the living room, his face hard, his jaw clenched as if carved from stone. My heart pounded as I stood before him, one hand resting on my swollen belly. I was 6 months pregnant, and this was the moment I had prayed to avoid. I thought maybe, just maybe, he would soften when he saw me carrying his grandchild. But I was wrong. His eyes weren't filled with compassion. They were filled with shame. "You have disgraced me, Evelyn," he spat, his voice echoing like thunder through the walls of the house. "Do you think I worked all my life, built this family's name, only for you to drag it into the mud? A child without a husband? You are no daughter of mine." The words struck me like blows. My knees trembled, but I fought to stand tall. "Papa, please," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I made a mistake, yes, but this baby is innocent. I need your support. I have nowhere else to go." He rose to his feet, towering over me. His hands were fists, not of violence, but of finality. "Pack your things. Before dawn breaks, you will not live under this roof. I'd rather the neighbors call me cruel than allow them to laugh at me because of you." I felt tears sting my eyes, hot and unstoppable. I had imagined this conversation in so many ways, but never like this. Never so cold. My mother stood at the corner, her face pale, her lips trembling, but she said nothing. She couldn't defy him. "Papa, please." My voice broke. "I am still your child. You stopped being my child the moment you chose shame over honor." He pointed toward the door, his finger like a dagger. "Get out." My heart cracked. I clutched my belly, my baby kicking as though sensing my distress. A suitcase was shoved into my arms, clothes stuffed carelessly inside. Then came the moment that burned itself into my memory forever. My father stepping forward and hurling the suitcase at my feet. The loud thud was final, sealing my fate. I bent down to pick it up, my tears blurring my vision. The weight of rejection crushed me, but somewhere deep within me, a flame sparked. If my father thought I would crumble, he was wrong. I turned back to look at him one last time, my face wet, my lips trembling. "One day, Papa," I said, my voice low but firm, "you will regret these words. You will look for me, and you will not find the broken girl you threw away tonight." His only response was silence. And so I walked out of my home, the same home where I had once laughed as a child, eaten at his table, and felt safe. That night, carrying my unborn child and a bag of belongings, I stepped into the cold darkness, knowing my life would never be the same again. The night air bit into my skin as I stepped outside, the heavy door slamming shut behind me. For a moment, I just stood there, clutching my small suitcase, staring at the familiar house I had once called home. The lights from inside glowed warmly through the curtains, mocking me. Inside there was comfort, family, and safety. Outside where I now stood, there was only coldness and uncertainty. I lowered myself onto the stone bench by the gate. My legs felt weak, my belly heavy, and tears blurred my sight until everything shimmered in watery shapes. 6 months pregnant, abandoned by the man who gave me life. How was I supposed to survive now? I placed my palm gently on my stomach, feeling the faint kick of my baby. That tiny movement made me weep harder, but it also anchored me. I wasn't alone. No matter what the world said, no matter who had turned their back on me, this little life inside me depended on me. I wiped my tears with trembling hands and whispered to my child, "Don't worry, my love. Mama won't fail you. They may have cast us away, but I'll find a way." The street was quiet, only the hum of distant generators and the occasional barking of dogs breaking the silence. I could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on me. Neighbors who once smiled at me would soon whisper, "Look at her, thrown out like garbage." The thought burned like acid in my chest. As I sat there, a bitter wind swept past, chilling me through my thin dress. I shivered and hugged myself tighter. I thought of knocking on the door again, begging Papa to change his mind, but pride held me back. He had made it clear. To him, I was a disgrace. To him, my unborn baby was nothing more than a stain. I stood up, wobbling slightly from the weight of my pregnancy, and looked down the dimly lit street. The world suddenly felt so big, so unforgiving. I had no money, no safe place to go, and no one I could trust at that hour. My suitcase felt heavier than bricks, but I dragged it along the road anyway, each step echoing with determination I didn't know I had. When I grew too tired to continue, I sat on a wooden bench near a broken streetlight. My heart ached, and for the first time in my life, I felt utterly alone. I tilted my head toward the dark sky, whispering, "God, if you're real, please don't let me die like this. Give me strength. Not for me, but for this child." Another kick came from inside my belly, stronger this time. I smiled weakly, stroking the curve of my stomach. "You're reminding me to fight, aren't you?" I whispered. "We will fight. We will survive. And one day, when he least expects it, we will return. And he will see us not broken, but victorious." I didn't know how, or when, or what path I would take. But that night, under the dim streetlight with my suitcase beside me, I made a silent vow. I would never crawl back to my father. I would rise. I would rebuild. And I would turn this pain into strength. With that vow burning in my chest, I rose again and kept walking into the unknown, but not into defeat. The days that followed were the hardest of my life. I learned quickly that the world outside my father's house had no pity for a pregnant girl with nowhere to go. My first night was spent on a cold wooden bench near the bus park, my suitcase under my head, and my arms wrapped tightly around my belly. Every noise startled me, the shout of conductors, the rumble of late-night buses, the drunken laughter of strangers. I barely slept, too afraid, too exposed. By morning, my throat was dry, my stomach empty. Hunger gnawed at me, but I pushed the pain aside. I needed a plan. I couldn't wander forever. I thought of the few people I knew, neighbors, classmates, but I knew they'd judge me just like my father. Shame was a heavy chain, and I dragged it everywhere I went. It was on the third day, exhausted and weak, that I stumbled upon a small church compound. A middle-aged woman was sweeping the yard. Something about her eyes was kind. I approached cautiously, clutching my suitcase. "Please," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Do you know anywhere I could stay just for a night?" She stopped sweeping, her gaze resting on my swollen belly before moving back to my face. For a moment, I feared she'd chase me away too. But instead, she sighed and shook her head softly. "Child, you look like you haven't eaten in days. Come inside. You need food before anything else." Her name was Mama Ruth. She wasn't rich, but she had a heart bigger than any mansion. She gave me a plate of rice, a mattress in a tiny corner of her house, and most importantly, a chance. "I can't do much," she told me, "but if you're willing to work, I'll help you stand on your feet." I washed clothes, swept compounds, ran errands, anything she asked, I did. My back ached, my feet swelled, but each coin she pressed into my palm felt like a step forward. I saved every naira, no matter how little. At night, I'd rock myself to sleep beside the mattress she gave me, whispering to my unborn child, "We'll build something out of this. Just hold on." When my baby came, a boy with bright eyes and the loudest cry, I thought my heart would burst with love. I named him Emmanuel, God with us, because somehow, despite everything, I knew God hadn't abandoned us. Life didn't magically become easy, but Mama Ruth stood by me. She helped me sell foodstuffs in the market, then taught me how to save from my profits. Slowly, painfully, I began to see the outline of a future. There were nights I broke down in tears from exhaustion. Times when Emmanuel fell sick, and I thought I would lose him. Times when I looked at other families and felt the sting of rejection all over again. But then I'd see his little smile, his tiny hands clutching my finger, and the fire in my heart would flare back up. 2 years passed like that. Hard, bitter, but also beautiful. From nothing, I had carved a life. From rejection, I had built resilience. And as I watched Emmanuel take his first steps across the small room one morning, I knew the time had come. The time to go back. 2 years. That's how long it took me to crawl out of the ashes of rejection and build something that looked like hope. I still remember the day I opened the doors of my first small shop. It wasn't much, just a wooden stall at the edge of the market with a few shelves and sacks of rice, beans, and spices stacked neatly, but to me, it was a palace. The smell of dried fish and pepper clung to my clothes, the sound of buyers haggling filled my ears, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I belonged somewhere. It started small. With the little money I saved, I sold food items in front of Mama Ruth's house. At first, people looked at me with suspicion. The girl who had been thrown out pregnant, now shouting prices in the street? But over time, respect grew. I treated customers fairly, smiled even when I was tired, and delivered goods on time. Word spread, and before long, I had regular buyers. When the business grew beyond what I could carry in baskets, I rented that small stall in the market. Standing behind the counter, arranging my goods, I felt powerful in a way my father's acceptance could never have given me. This was mine. I had built it with my bare hands, my sweat, my tears. Emmanuel was always by my side, toddling around the shop, charming customers with his wide smile and curious eyes. Some people would stop just to pinch his cheeks, and in those moments, my heart swelled with pride. My boy wasn't a curse. He was my blessing, my anchor, my proof that even in pain, life could bloom. I didn't just sell foodstuffs, I learned. I read small business guides Mama Ruth borrowed for me. I asked successful sellers in the market how they grew. I reinvested every profit. No parties, no luxuries, just focus. Slowly, the stall grew into something more. I could afford to employ a young girl to help me, and soon, I was no longer running but leading. One evening after closing, I looked around the bustling market as traders packed their goods. Emmanuel tugged at my dress and pointed at the sky. "Mama, look, stars!" he said with his baby voice. I followed his tiny finger, and for the first time in years, I let myself smile without the shadow of sorrow. The stars looked like promises. Promises of more. That night, as I locked up my stall, I bent down to Emmanuel's level and said, "My son, the time has come. We left home with nothing, but we've built everything. Now it's time to return. Not to beg, not to crawl, but to show them what strength looks like." He didn't fully understand, but he giggled, wrapping his little arms around my neck. His innocent laughter sealed my decision. 2 years ago, I walked away from my father's house in tears. Now I was going back, not as a disgrace, but as a woman who had risen. And I was ready for the shock my father would face. The drive back to my father's house felt like a journey through time. Every street, every corner we passed carried a memory of my childhood, the laughter, the running feet, the warm meals. But those memories clashed bitterly with the last one I carried of that house. The night I was thrown out, 6 months pregnant, clutching a suitcase and my pride. Now, 2 years later, I was no longer the broken girl who left. I wore a neatly pressed dress, my hair tied back with care, and Emmanuel, my son, sat beside me in the passenger seat, his eyes wide with curiosity. He was nearly 2 now, with bright eyes that mirrored mine and a smile that could melt even the coldest heart. "Mama," he asked softly, tugging at my arm, "are we going to Grandpa's house?" The word cut through me like a knife. Grandpa. The man who had denied him before he even took his first breath. But I smiled at my boy, stroking his curly hair. Yes, Emmanuel. But today, we're not going as beggars. We're going as a family. Remember that. When I stepped out of the car in front of my father's house, my heart thudded violently in my chest. The compound looked even grander than before. New paint, a bigger gate, flowers blooming along the edges. A small crowd had gathered, relatives, neighbors, curious eyes that widened as they recognized me. Their whispers were sharp, cutting through the air. Is that not Evelyn? She's back. With a child? But look at her clothes. She looks successful. My father stood at the veranda, his arms folded, his face frozen. For a long moment, neither of us moved. His eyes flicked from me to Emmanuel, who clung to my hand, then back to me again. His expression was unreadable, but I could see it, the shock he tried to mask, the pride colliding with shame. I took a deep breath and walked forward, each step steady, deliberate. I wasn't the frightened girl he had thrown out. I was a woman who had fought, bled, and risen. When I finally stood before him, Emmanuel broke free from my hand and, to everyone's surprise, ran straight toward him. My father stiffened as the little boy wrapped his tiny arms around his leg. The murmurs grew louder, and for the first time, I saw my father's eyes waver. "Papa," I said, my voice calm but firm, "you cast me out with nothing. But look at me now. Look at what your nothing has become." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. My words lingered in the air, hanging between us like a sword. I could see it in his face, memories of that night, the guilt creeping in, the realization that he had thrown away not just his daughter but his own flesh and blood's future. Relatives shifted uncomfortably. My mother stood at the doorway, her hand covering her mouth, tears threatening to spill. I held my head high, my voice steady as I finished. "You may not have wanted us, Papa, but we came back anyway. Not broken. Not defeated. We came back strong. And that, you can never take away." The air in the living room was thick with silence. Everyone, relatives, neighbors, even my own mother stood frozen, eyes darting between me, Emmanuel, and my father. Emmanuel clung to his grandfather's leg, his innocent giggle breaking the tension, but my father stood as rigid as stone, his pride battling the guilt etched across his face. I stepped further inside, my heels clicking softly on the tiled floor. Each step felt like a declaration. I am no longer the girl you cast aside. I am a woman reborn. "Papa," I began, my voice steady, though my heart pounded against my ribs. "I didn't come here for pity. I didn't come to beg for a place in your house. I came to show you what you threw away." Gasps echoed through the room. My father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. His silence gave me strength. I reached into my handbag and pulled out a brown envelope. From it, I laid documents on the table. The certificate of my registered business, photos of my thriving shop, records of the land I had purchased. The whispers around the room grew louder. Some leaned closer, craning their necks to see. "I built this," I said firmly, my eyes locked on my father. "From nothing. From the same nothing you hurled into the night 2 years ago. You thought I would crawl back broken, but instead, I rose. I built a business. I built a home. And I raised your grandson with dignity." My father's hands trembled slightly at his sides. He tried to mask it, but I saw. For the first time in my life, I saw the unshakable man shake. Emmanuel, oblivious to the storm of emotions swirling around, toddled over to me and tugged at my dress. "Mama, can Grandpa come visit us too?" he asked innocently, his little voice piercing the silence like a knife. My throat tightened. I glanced at my father. His lips quivered, his eyes glistening. Slowly, as if the weight of years had suddenly crushed him, he sank into a chair. His voice cracked for the first time since I had known him. "Evelyn," he whispered, barely audible. "I was wrong. I was a fool." His eyes dropped to Emmanuel, then back to me. Can you ever forgive me? The room held its breath. My mother covered her face, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. The neighbors exchanged stunned looks. I inhaled deeply, my chest heavy with a mix of pain and triumph. Papa, I said softly but firmly, I didn't fight this battle for your forgiveness. I fought it for him. I touched Emmanuel's head gently, because he deserves a future brighter than our past. I paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. But know this, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to let bitterness own me. My life is proof that rejection cannot define me. The silence broke as Emmanuel climbed into my lap, smiling up at both of us. My father covered his face with his hands, his shoulders trembling. And for the first time, I saw not a tyrant, not a man of iron pride, but a broken father facing the consequences of his own choices. I rose, gathering Emmanuel into my arms. I looked at my father one last time and said, "We came back, Papa. Not to shame you, but to show you what strength looks like." And with that, I walked out of the house with my son in my arms, the whispers of awe and regret following me. The shock was complete. The girl who had been cast out pregnant had returned a woman of strength, and nothing would ever be the same again. What are your thoughts on this story, and have you experienced Evelyn's story before in your life? Please leave your comments, like and share this story to your loved ones.